Well, hello, good morning, and welcome to our latest Cardiff Life Business Club. It's a discussion with a disparate group of new businesses who all share one thing. They've been navigating through this pandemic as a new company. And we'll hear about their stories, their background, their rationale, what they're seeking to do, and how the future looks for them in the coming months and indeed years ahead. So we'll be speaking in order. It'll be for Donald Gray of Darwin Gray and Lofton Co.'s Simon Baston. That's all on behalf of Good Sheds. It's a really interesting new sustainable urban high street in Barry. Actually, it's the first new urban high street. So retail, restaurants, and more. Then we'll also be joined by Matthew Jones and Rob Davis of Matthew Jones Ceramics. They're actually trading this morning, so who knows, there might be some customers popping along, which is fine, because that's the nature of business. You seize that business when you can. And then also Ed Chu of Indie Eats. And with the opening up of the economy in the coming weeks and months, it'll be fascinating to hear their stories. Please do send any questions you have using the little Q&A button below. You can ask anonymously or be named as you like. And note that today's Business Club is being recorded and will be on our Cardiff Life YouTube channel this afternoon. A few points from us before we get going. Please look out for our next Cardiff Life Business Club on May 24th. It's on the event sector in Cardiff, and we know how valuable and vital events are, both in the sense of enjoyment of the city, but also the commerce and reputation that they add to Cardiff. And so we'll be exploring how events, companies of all different scales and sizes have been navigating these times. Please do get in touch for our Cardiff Life Business Surgeries. These are these bespoke deep dive sessions showcasing companies' expertise through discussion. Talk to us about how you might be involved, because we can all do with new advice and new business. The business surgeries will be continuing as virtual in the future, of course, and they will have enduring value available like all else on our Cardiff Life YouTube channel. Next up, we have our Crumbs Takeaway. And this is a virtual conference for the hospitality sector next Monday morning, April 19th from 10 a.m. It's about just under 2 hours. It's part of our Crumbs brand, and it's shaping up really, really well with some excellent participants lined up. Keynotes, panel sessions, practical insights, and some truly heartwarming tales of the good that people do, how hospitality businesses have responded to support others during the pandemic. Each of our editors in areas where we have, cities where we have magazines and events, such as Cardiff, have chosen a couple of really interesting tales as part of that session on hospitality next Monday. Please do join us. I think it'll just be a good time to come together to share perhaps some of the war wounds, but really some of the plans going forward as well. Cardiff Life Awards, we've been happy to say that the awards will be held on the 30th of September this year at City Hall in real life. And please do, the nominations are open right now, so please do nominate for your businesses, your teams, and of course for you. It's free, and there's great profile for all our finalists, let alone, of course, the winners. There's a new thing we're running, which is the Grand Reveal event. It's a way away yet. It's on June 16th, but we'll remind you of that. This is basically where previously we've sort of revealed the finalists via email and social media at dead on a certain time on a day. We're going to do it slightly differently. This whole pandemic has taught us the value of these sorts of sessions. And so we will have a live reveal on Zoom to all our finalists for each of the categories and just highlight some of the great attributes of some of those finalists, but also of the awards themselves. And then they'll go live on social media and such like. So there's more drama. And if anyone is interested, that is, of course, available for sponsorship. So talk to us if so. We already have a great roster of sponsors for the awards, very much led by our platinum sponsors, sponsor Marsh Commercial, plus Gennaro, Park Plaza, Regis, WSET, and Cardiff Life. And most recently, delighted to say, our new sponsor as well is 13 Fields, and welcome to them. If you're an ambitious company or one seeking to rebuild the business pipeline, as we all are, or just plain proud to be a leading Cardiff company, please do consider sponsoring. Everyone coming together, the coolest of the indies, the largest local companies, after this year of all years, will be just the best celebration of business in Cardiff. Property awards back on 26th November at the Coal Exchange. And yeah, sponsorships are available for those. It's particularly the professional services and all involved in the value chain of property. There's one more thing. We've been thinking deeply about the nature of entrepreneurs and how entrepreneurs contribute so much to our cities. They're central to Cardiff, central to all areas. So we're launching EntreConf. Here we go. New ways of looking at the world that entrepreneurs have, new business models, new services, products, jobs, new opportunities for advisors, investors, financial companies, lawyers, academic institutions, marketing agencies, and so many more. EntreConf is the Entrepreneurs Conference. The future is unwritten, as it says. It's virtual this year on July 1st with a real-life dinner in the autumn and then a full-blown conference in 22. It's pitched at startups and scale-ups, and some may even be the futurecorns, the big breakout value players in years to come. We hope it will give profound insight and valuable inspiration, will help catalyze partnerships, connect all parts of the value chain. It'll celebrate the special contribution of entrepreneurs. And we're really thrilled with the response from the handful of briefings we've had so far. It's quite clear that entrepreneurs generate excitement as well as opportunity, and that many will benefit from peer support. Site launching shortly, if not today, in fact, probably tomorrow, and then full-on comms will be powering out. Please talk to us about options to be involved and speaking to sponsoring. And yeah, the future is unwritten. The heart of all we do in Cardiff is, of course, Cardiff Life, and we're really proud to publish a magazine that celebrates the best of this incredible city. And we're also really proud of the support we've had from the businesses of Cardiff during these times. Thank you. Right, enough of that. Let's do it. Let's bring forward our new business speakers, and let's start with the team behind Good Sheds. So here are Simon Baston of Loftco and Donald Gray of Darwin Gray, to talk to us about this this very, very bold new venture. Good morning to you both.
Good morning. Thanks very much for inviting us both.
Oh, that's kind. Well, you know, I have to say, really good for you for bringing forward such an extraordinary premise, in a sense. So when you were considering this, I don't know, back in 2017, 2018, some long time back, what were you thinking? What did it look like then? What did the site look like? What were your plans like, and so on? How did it come about? Who'd like to tell us the background story?
Shall I start, Donald?
Yes, go on.
Well, we as a company have been developing over the last sort of 10 years much more collaborative spaces where people can live, work, and play together in one sustainable location. The Good Sheds itself, on the basis that we did the pump house opposite, we felt that Barry is moving to a lot of critical mass people in one place, which would lead to a very sustainable and a low carbon footprint type environment. The next stage for us is to look at an independent based scheme where lots of collaborative businesses can work together in one place, affordable, as I said, low carbon footprint, great transport links. And this led us to the Good Sheds. And then we looked at what could we add on to that? What would bring it to a place where it becomes a niche destination, resort, if you want to call it for a better word, because nowadays, just simply to go out and purchase a loaf of bread or a cup of coffee is not good enough. It really isn't good enough. It has to be an experience. So the end shot is with a Good Shed. We hope it's a place where people can come for the day, where there's offices there, restaurants, they can purchase whatever they need. Also, they can get involved, as we'll speak later, with Matthew and Rob, the makers there, and you know, make their own products. They can have weddings there, their own parties there. It's there for the community to use on an independent level.
And give us some idea of scale, very, very roughly, I don't know, how many business, once it's all fully occupied and so on, how many businesses, how many residential, how many, you know, footfall, give us some idea of scale.
Sure. Yeah, the residential wise, when it's complete, will be around about 70 units and 11 units as a service department hotel. That's really important for the transient workforce and for tourism. When business wise, we'll have around about 55 to 60 different businesses working outside, inside the envelope of the Good Sheds. Footfall, we would hope once that's complete, in excess of 1 million people a year will inside the Good Sheds. And then we hope that this will become a breeding ground and an incubation space for many businesses to move on. The reality is, what we've created there is when someone comes to us and says, look, Simon, I need more space, I'm going to move on. Well, that's a success, and that's what we're that's what we're hoping to breed there.
It's a very enlightened approach, and if it is, as long as it's got that reputation, as long as the ecosystem, sort of critical mass,
yeah,
I'm sure it will sort of be. It should become self-sustaining of other businesses.
Actually,
Yeah. Good. And Donald, tell us all how Darwin Gray got involved in this project and your role as the legal advisors.
Well, I've been involved with Simon on a couple of other projects beforehand. So he basically said one day, come and have a look at this site. So we went down, walked the barriers.
What did you think when you first saw? I mean, honesty time. What did you think then when you first saw it? Thought, really?
Well, it was a bit hard to imagine compared to what it looks like now, and I know that from other people have said exactly the same thing when they sort of said, well, I went past there, I hadn't been past for a couple of years, and it sort of shocked them more than anything. There's piles of containers there, and businesses are operating out of them. So it's from a legal perspective, it followed in some ways quite a traditional pattern of acquisition of a site and doing all the sort of boring bits that lawyers do, so that you actually end up with something that a fund is prepared to put money into. But you need the vision to start with, and sometimes that became part of the legal job, because you had to persuade somebody who's going to lend money on it that it was a viable project, because there are quite a lot of differences from the sort of things that people had looked at in the past. They'd actually see established businesses rather than startups, longer term leases, a different mix of businesses. And so we were lucky, I mean, in Wales, that we got DBW, who will support projects like that. But it needed it needed them to actually understand what the outcome was likely to be, and Simon's track record in similar projects was quite important. I'm sure if we'd just gone to them as a new business and said, this is what we'd like to do, and we got this site, and council were quite interested in giving us a lease, we might have got a different response. So you had to be able to show what you'd done in the past to actually persuade them we were going to the next step from what we'd done before.
Reputations are cumulative, and they're often the secret weapon behind all sorts of companies, but clearly the case here as well. Simon, from your point of view, were there any sort of dark nights of the soul where you thought, you know what, this is just not going to happen?
Lots. When you pick up a project and you start that, if there's any advice that people who might want to do this, or entrepreneurs who are looking, the thing that I always think of is, what is the end position? And the end position is people walking around buying, selling and working. Everything in the middle, to me, becomes slightly irrelevant, because I've got to get to the end. And so everything is about the end for me, and delivery. So I think sometimes what you have to be careful of in the middle for us when we talk about dark nights, because this is a first of its kind in the UK. You have to sort of like switch them off slightly and become irrelevant to you, the issues during the way, because you can seriously get bogged down by the minutiae of the complications of everything. And I think that's a balance that's really quite difficult, because you've obviously got to attend to these situations as they arise, but also you have to be sort of single-minded enough and see the vision to say, this doesn't matter, we're getting there, whatever happens, and everybody on that train has to come with you, and that's probably the most difficult part to get to an end, is convincing everybody on a daily basis that we're going to get there, it's going to be a great scheme.
Yeah, and presumably that convincing almost starts with yourself. You've got to convince yourself you're going to do it.
No, that doesn't take long. That takes about 30 seconds.
I've strongly formed that impression already. But let's move forwards to the more recent times. I mean, bringing forward a major scale, innovative, integrated offering like this with many different elements is inherently complicated in the best of times. But last year, how did the pandemic immediately affect you from end of March through, in terms of your planning about when you were due to be opening, what scale you're opening with?
We were about 4 months off from opening, 5 months. Starting to think of external finishes, patio areas, coverings. And as we discussed before the meeting, we were lucky, I think, that we had 3 or 4 months to build some shelters, to build some canopies, to take a look at one-way systems. I think for other businesses who were just about to open and didn't have that opportunity, really difficult. And that was sheer luck, in all honesty. There's no time in there on our behalf. We just had this window of opportunity to be able to adapt.
Yeah.
As Donald mentioned before, DVW and the Vale of Glamorgan, they saw this and they really supported us. They support all the way through this, and they made sure that we had the appropriate funds and the support to get there.
I was going to ask you specifically about the financing for the project. How has that been affected by this sort of, interregnum at absolute least it's been, but also by your funding partners? Yeah, we've been supported all the way. It's been hugely more expensive because to make a site like this compliant and to be able to use the site under these conditions, and I think it's probably fair to suggest that they will remain in place even once we've lost social distancing to some degree. That has added a huge cost to the site. And these costs for lots of businesses like ourselves aren't going to be recoverable. They're not going to be. You just hope that, obviously the site progresses, you have a stronger tenant mix, and over a period of time you can build some more income. But at the time in March, I think nearly all of us in business, whichever one business you're in, you have to say at this point, I'm either in or I'm out. And I think the correct businesses during the pandemic have been the ones, it's not a question of spending your way out of this, it's been ones that somehow managed to finance their way out of it. I think if you would have retracted and said, I'm doing nothing, I'm not going to protect my business, I don't think you're going to be able to come out of this. Yeah, I think that's been true across most sectors, that there isn't an option. In one way or another, we've all got to get active and do what we can, either to protect the capital we have or to increase the awareness of the offering. Tell us about the very near-term plans. I mean, obviously we've got, without the running commentary from the government, we've got various phases of opening. What does the summer look like for you in the second half of the year? Well, we hope that middle of June, towards the end of June, most of the social distancing will be completely relaxed, where we can pull our tables in a meter apart, which will bring another 15, 16 tables, another 70 people at one time to the site. Then we've got outdoor seating for 350 people. The main shops have opened now and reopened it up and running, which is great. They've done a fantastic job, everybody on the site, and adhering to where we've got to go. And they've realised that we're only going to come out of this, the Good Shed, stronger by being a community and working together. One of the most difficult things for 30, 35 businesses to come together is inherently you're interested in your own business to start with. So you're always pulling your way. So we've got to keep finding a middle ground that keeps everybody there happy and be able to work together. And everybody inside the Good Sheds have been brilliant at coming together and finding their own middle ground, which I think is a testament to where we're going to go in terms of collaboration. The second half of the year, we would like to see no social distancing and to open the site up further. However, we've made the decision that there will be to eat, there'll be seated areas, there'll be no queuing for food, and we'll maintain a one-way system. That's for everybody's enjoyment, and it's going to just be easier for the flow of traffic for the site. So, Donald, I'm sure from Darwin Gray's point of view, this was a reasonably complex piece of legal work with a number of moving parts. But was it? Has it also been one of the most enjoyable because of the sheer challenge of it?
I wouldn't say it would be enjoyable, because there was a lot of pressure in that period between March and July, opening up the site, because they were. It's easier when you can sort of program a thing, and you're going through the various stages and you working to a deadline, but be sort of in March to be sort of effectively be told there's all these extra things you got to do before we open, and we've got to get support from DVW to pay for all the additional costs. It made, if anything, a bit of a stressful period for everybody involved. And I mean, overall, I mean, I'm sure when we look back, we'll say it's a sort of a war story. It will be described as quite an enjoyable experience, and you'll actually celebrate all the successes involved with the site and the change that it may make to Barry overall, because it's going to have an impact on the surrounding area, not just it's not just in itself that it has its own benefits, but you can see the changes in Barry anyway, but something like that there sort of has an impact.
So that's a halo effect.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing you sort of say, well, there's some success, and I guess that's why we've had the support from the council and from DBW all the way through, because they can see that, because it's not just another. It just doesn't look like anything else that's around there, and there's too it's a criticism of town centres. A lot of them look the same, and Barry's going to look quite different.
Let's a couple last questions in this part before we bring in our panelists. Is this as much as a game changer for Barry? Does it change the way the place operates and thinks about itself, or is it just it's an important thing in its own right but doesn't have that extra effect?
I'm not so sure it's on its own change, Barry, but there's been a sea change for about maybe the last 5 to 10 years in terms of how people perceive Barry and see that area, and now they see that it's got 5 or 6 fantastic beaches, great country parks, four trains every hour into Cardiff. It ticks a lot of boxes, and I think that millennial and particularly the sort of 20 to 40-year-old spend is moving towards Barry quite quickly, because I think they see it as a reasonable alternative to bring a family up, start their career. They can also, this new hybrid way of working, perhaps over 2 days in the office, 3 days at home, or vice versa. Barry's in a very good position to be able to do that, to have some micro type offices inside Barry, or go to your hub in Cardiff. So I think that the Good Sheds is part of Barry's journey of where it's going, and I think it's just accelerated that journey.
And for Loft & Co, is this part of a journey to other projects, that this is going to be a focal point for other towns and cities to say, we can change, and you're the pilot? Are you looking at that?
Yeah, we've purchased Newport Market from Newport Council. Is a full refurbishment. It's the largest refurbishment of a market in the UK. It's based upon the principles of collaboration, social responsibility at the Good Sheds, and another scheme in Swansea called the Albert Hall, which is a hybrid between perhaps the Tram Sheds and the Good Sheds. And these are areas that we feel have been undervalued in Wales. There's a lot of people live there. The demand is huge, and there's a groundswell. Our opinion at Loftco is there's a tsunami there, really, of change that's happening. And I think a lot of governance and a lot of lawmaking and a lot of maybe government bodies don't understand this millennial change is coming behind us really quickly, how people want to live, work and play. And
that millennial change, if anything, has been what one would imagine accelerated by the pandemic. That sense of, of how you work and live, the sense of what working from home is as a sort of office space.
But absolutely correct. If you look at any social media postings, let's take Barry on its own. The last year during this COVID period, you see how proud people have become of Barry, how much they recognise the great beaches, the parks, and that's accelerated that level of independence and community that people are trying to reconnect with.
Yeah, and there's one of the mantras we've had with Cardiff Life is that lockdown has made everything local.
It has,
we've fallen back in love with our cities and even our sort of smaller.
That's not a bad thing, is it? No, that's not.
No, it's not at all, and there's a deeper sense of value thereby. Well, truly fascinating. There's loads more here, but we're going to bring in our other panelists. And just to say to you and to anyone embarking on a new business, new venture, all the very, very best. It is not straightforward at the moment, but as we often say, the future is unwritten. It's going to take pioneering entrepreneurs.
Thanks, Greg.
So good for you. So thanks to you both. Let's bring in our other 3 speakers. So Ed Chu, the owner of Indie Eats, Matthew Jones and Rob Davis of Matthew Jones Ceramics. Let's have you on screen. There you go. As mentioned, you may be interrupted by customers, which is a lovely thing to be interrupted by. But I tell you what I'd like you to do is to each of you to give us the pitch. Hit us up with the elevator pitch on what you do and why you do it. 1 minute tops. Go, Ed.
Okay, so my name's Ed. I'm the owner operator of Indie Eats. We started during the initial national lockdown last year with the idea to provide independent businesses with an alternative to the big players in the food delivery scene. So since we started, we've been able to offer lower commissions to independent businesses, give gig economy riders a fair wage, and also give back to the community as well. Thus far, we're proud to say that we've been able to donate back to Cardiff Mind and Cardiff Food Bank, and we hope to continue this in the future as well.
You've spoken so eloquently but so speedily. You've got some time left yet, Ed. So tell us how in an absolute nutshell, and forgive the comparison, how your offering compares with Just Eat or perhaps even more Deliveroo or Uber Eats.
Well, basically, if you pick up the phone and want to talk to somebody, you'll get me instead of maybe being on the customer service line for an hour. For one, but we also offer, we offer lower commissions, much more personal service. And basically, you've got somebody that basically cares, and has a personal stake in it. So, I mean, I'd like to say that Indie Eats is a massive company. I have staff left, right, and centre. But to be perfectly honest, Indie Eats is just me and the gig economy riders that I enlist.
I don't know if you've seen The Wizard of Oz. There's a very revealing scene right at the end where the curtain is revealed and there's just one man with a megaphone.
That's it.
Or that one man with a megaphone at the moment, but I'm sure you have plans. Okay, good for you. Rob and Matt, either both together or one of you. 1 minute, tell us what you do.
Hi, Greg. Thank you for this. It's brilliant. I'm Rob. That's Matt. Matt's the maker. Basically, we have 3 type of arms of the business. One is our retail sector, which is in the good sheds, and you've just spoken to Donald and Simon there. Another one is our wholesale and trade, which is to cafes, restaurants, other shops and stuff, or what they want to buy from us. And then our third one is our workshops, which hopefully now with restrictions easing a bit, we'll be able to start running again. And in the workshops, people come in and they make their own pots, and then we take it away, fire it in our kilns, and then they can have it for home. Our retail is quite obvious, like what Matt makes. We do a lot of functional pottery, a lot of decorative pottery that you can see behind us.
Hold one up. Put it forward.
Yeah.
There we go.
Careful, don't drop it.
I've dropped plenty in the past, don't worry about it. So this is
and out of interest, I mean, how much might that retail for, that particular one?
This is retailing at £300. So they're called moon jars, and they're made by joining 2 bowls together, and then you open the top to make the top wider than the bottom. And there's a whole history of moon jars. They're kind of traditionally made in Korea for storing foods and wines, and they're just beautiful things to make. And yeah, I've fallen in love with making these a little bit. So
well, hands up anyone who hasn't heard of moon jars. It's been, this session's been useful, if only for that.
yeah, exactly.
Your business, I mean, as you've described it, you've got sort of 3 legs, if that's a thing, to your stool, and I would guess at different times, different parts have been slightly easier to get value from, and others have been more threatened. But we'll come on to that in a sec. Let's but thank you for that speedy run through. Let's bring back Simon and Donald, if you can pop back on screen. And I'd like to ask you all as panelists a few questions, and just dive in with the thoughts on this. What do you think have been the most important things you've learned from the past year or so, from both a personal but really from a business point of view?
From my business and personal point of view, and Simon's touched on it as well, is the collaboration. We've been able to kind of survive and bring income in by lots of businesses coming in and asking us, what can we do? How can we create together? How can we grow together? And that's been something that's helped us massively over these last 6 months now of this other lockdown that we've had. And then in the good sheds as well, we've collaborated with businesses here that have also helped other people see us and come in to see us.
Yeah, I mean, theme of collaboration is there across the piece. We've, you know, whether instinctively or through necessity, there's been so many more collaborations and conversations because we're all sharing similar sorts of experiences. How about for you, Ed, Simon, or Donald? What's the most significant points you've learned?
One thing I was going to say was that I realised, particularly working from home, is to try and simplify some of the work I do, to make it easier to do things. So a lot of the lessons we've learned from the good sheds and how to do that, moving on into Newport Market to try and improve on that, so that the sort of legal process, particularly from the end user point of view, the occupier's point of view, is as straightforward as possible, because otherwise it just becomes an impediment for the businesses. Because usually, I'm not saying we'll get to the American model where you sign the lease and move in the next day, because there's certain legal things I can't change, but there's certain things we can make easier, and that's it sort of goes to collaboration, but it's more sort of making business flow more efficiently, because it really we're part of the process, but we shouldn't be an impediment.
I mean, load the question. Do you think lawyers have been at times an impediment to process? Well,
they certainly have historically. I mean, and that's always been a criticism, even within, you know, you go to law school and then they teach you about how the sort of certain aspects of law would be an impediment for business, and there's been a move away from, you know, even sort of things that, simple things like sort of you go back sort of 30, 40 years, and the amount of lawyers using bits of Latin in their in documents or letters, or using archaic language, a lot of that's gone, but there's still a lot of things in the process that could be improved upon. And some of it you can't control because it's been enforced upon you by government, but other things you can do. And the way in which you design documents, what you require by way of information, or what you supply by way of information, all can make a difference to the process.
I would have thought Latin's a bit of an occupational hazard for a lawyer. It's part of the armor you have to don to generate value or some such. So
not nowadays.
No, well, good to hear. How about you, Simon? What have been the most significant learnings, either personally or in business, for you?
Well, we've been moving towards the independence or collaborative sector for the last 5 years, but the last year has reinforced quickly how much you need to be on the site. You need to micromanage people's expectations. You need to understand is that, to Matthew and Rob, it's more than a business. I'm not dealing with a corporation there. I'm dealing with people. You're dealing with people and their aspirations far exceed just earning their salary. It's more important to them. It's their lifestyle. So in the last year, as we talked about COVID accelerating independent businesses, collaboration, along with that comes a new set of skills, and that probably will come with even the professional sector. Donald, accountancy, they're going to have to get to grips with the fact is they're not dealing with large corporations anymore. These multi-use sites where, you know, people have got their own private business inside. You're dealing at a different level, and it's a much more personal level. And you have to make sure that your body language, or you try to make sure that your body language, your negotiations reflect that. And you always have to have in the back of your mind that this is more than just a 9-to-5 job to the people inside here. And a key word for us and our businesses is attempting to, not saying that we ever get there, but on a daily basis, we try to micromanage the situation. You can't passively manage the schemes anymore.
I guess just to pick that point, it's almost as though the trend, which again has been in place for quite some time, towards greater informality in business, that we, you know, I take it none of us are sort of habitually in suits and ties in these times, and may not be subsequently. 20 years back, certainly professional advisors, absolutely, as part of the carapace of business, or the amazing business in which you operated through offices that had a sense of formality. It's much more, if not intimate, it's much more personal. And I wonder how much that is going to continue.
Well, I'll just give an example. Working with Donald and working with his company, Donald's remit, although it's not a remit to their company, but I find it is they're there to conclude matters and get there, and to get a completion for you. And I think Donald was quite polite what you were saying earlier on, but a lot of professionals over the last 20, 30 years becomes a competition between the two of them. That becomes expensive, time consuming, and it sort of disenfranchises the average business from the process. And that is something that they have to get to grips with, because as we move to more independent, personal, smaller businesses all collaborating together, the professional sector at every level, in my view, including funding, is going to have to change the whole level of skill sets to how to deal with this process.
Ed, how about for you? Either on either element of that, either the learning that you've had, or perhaps also the professional advisors and support that you've had during this time. I'd like to comment on that.
So I come from a performing arts background, so setting up a business was completely new to me. I think one of the really important lessons that I've learned, and people keep drilling into me, is that at the end of the day, it's a business, it's not personal. And that's come, yeah, there was a bit of a learning curve for me there, because, you know, I want to be everyone's friend. I want to help all the businesses that I approach, but, you know, sometimes things don't work out. And I mean, with that, I think it leads on to the importance of mental health, I think, like for me personally anyway, understanding what my limits were in terms of, I couldn't, obviously it's my business, so I want to give everything I can, but there are limitations of, how much I can do and the breaks that I need to take. And if I don't take them, then at the end of the day, the business suffers, I suppose. Yeah, sorry.
At the risk of sort of complicating your thought processes, although it's true, business and personal are not the same thing, but businesses which lack personality, lack the distinctiveness, maybe are less able to thrive in these times. The role of humanity and personality, I personally think, is much more foregrounded, perhaps, than it's ever been previously.
No, absolutely.
Corporate stuff behind us necessarily. So tell us this: many people say about starting a new business of whatever sort that it's the hardest thing they've ever done, and always far harder than they'd realised. True or not true for you?
I would say that's pretty true for me. It's like I said, it's something completely new to me in this scale anyway, because I've never had to deal with this many people. I mean, one example is when I first started trying to create a fleet of riders and drivers. I did some research in terms of what the others were paying, and we knew that we could never compete to that level just because we didn't have the financial resources. So we came up with a figure that was fair, and in the first few months, it was wonderful. I had so much goodwill behind us, and riders were wanting to promote us, and they were happy to take that fee. But as more time went on, what we found was, especially now, so we pay £6.50 per delivery for our riders, and when we first started, it was more like £2 to £3 per delivery. So when I look back, I kind of think, wow, I'm so surprised that we had a fleet to begin with at all. But yeah, the big challenge is just negotiating that kind of between us and the workforce to basically kind of say, see what they want, what they need, and basically find somewhere in the middle that we're both happy to meet. And
I hope you've got a good lawyer behind you in terms of employment contracts and relationships and so on, in a way that, in retrospect, you'd imagine Deliveroo wish they'd sort themselves out, at the earlier stage.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely got a lawyer employment lawyer to look at it from the get-go and sort that all out.
Yeah, it's key for you. It's one of the key variables that I thought for your area. I mean, Simon, you're effectively almost a serial entrepreneur, I guess, by the nature of each project is quite distinct. Have you found that process of effectively starting up a new business harder than you'd expected, or are you so seasoned that it's just another challenge?
No, it's impossible to be seasoned, and it is more difficult. It's more difficult to get the scale of what you need to succeed. The Good Sheds couldn't succeed with just 6 businesses inside there. It needs 40. It needs critical mass. It needs 1 million people coming through there when it's pumping away for it to work. So to get there is a certain challenge. I'll just give you an example. When I was first starting business as a developer, sort of late 90s, we were converting some barns, houses. We would need then a solicitor and an architect to complete the job. The architect would do the basic structural calculations, sign it off, you get a mortgage. The reality is those buildings are still standing. where we are today, the good sheds still needs a solicitor and architect, but 17 more consultants joined us on that journey. This is a big problem. It's a big problem for every business. Is the means to productivity or means to an end is being slowed down by many levels of compliance, which I think is, and it's increasing. And I think we're all going to find out whatever level we are. So to start another project like Newport Market starts it all over again, that level. And whilst obviously I understand in a progressive society why lots of this compliance comes to the fore, I think we've also got to say, if we want to keep budding entrepreneurs, we want to keep young people actively coming into the marketplace, if the bar's placed too high, they'll never ever get in, and then we're gonna be in serious trouble, because we're just going to be looking at chains and a sort of a generic model.
Well, Matt and Rob, there's absolutely no danger of you looking at chains and generic models, but tell us from your point of view, how has it been by comparison what you'd expected? How tough has it been to create a new business, or have you've risen to the challenge and you're furiously pedaling away?
For me personally, it is tougher in lots of ways than I imagined it would be. Similar to what Simon was saying earlier, where you have this vision and then everything in between just sort of is inconsequential. But for us to make this happen, we've had to kind of deal with that and put things in place to make this happen here now. And it's been challenging, and in lots of ways that I ever imagined that it would be. But the vision is still there, the energy and the passion for it is still there. And from our first site visit back in June last year, I think it was, it just instinctually felt like the right thing to do without a conversation before Rob and I had a conversation after we left the site. We was just full of energy, and we knew straight away that being here, starting this business was the next step for both of us. So that's for me instinctual. It just felt so good, and so right at the time.
How much of a detailed plan did you have when you started?
It kind of just evolved, didn't it, as we went on?
I kind of came in to push forward the processes of what Matt's done. So Matt had something like Matt Jones Franks before, and then we developed it now for this site. And so it's kind of been, over the last 6 months, 9 months, has been all the road mapping, all the planning, all putting in the processes that we need to scale and expand, and obviously hit those 3 different arms of the revenue that we need of the retail, workshops and trade. So it's been consistent evolution. And I think with the original question of how hard is it to start a business, I'll hit it a different way of, I think it's very, very easy to start a business. You can go onto Company's House, type in a name that hasn't been used yet, pay £12, and suddenly you have a limited company, and you could call yourself a CEO on Instagram and be amazing. But it's the sustainability and the continuality of business that is the hard part. That first, what people don't realize is, I've started a business, yay, what do I do now? Is the real hard part. Because for me, this is my 3rd business that I've started and tried to grow. And each time it teaches you lessons, and each time you learn from it. But I think coming at it now, coming up with processes and learning, and with somebody that's got a very good experience in creating and manufacturing, it's put it together, and we have this very good synergy of being able to grow. And then what Simon's done, that he just said there, with letting smaller businesses have a foothold to then elevate, has been essential for this, because now we have a permanent space that we couldn't afford anywhere else, really.
It's also true with any entrepreneur, any new business, that whatever the plan is, the plan will simply be wrong.
Yeah.
Quickly it's wrong, and how far it's wrong. But to some extent, having that sort of lodestar approach of a plan, of a blueprint, or whatever, absolutely can be useful for many. But it's amazing how many entrepreneurs simply just don't have a plan. They've got a sense of direction, but nothing like a detail.
Oh, particularly COVID.
Plans, and this may slightly contradict completely what I've just said. advisors will often say that it's never too early to start thinking about your exit. Do you agree? And are any of you thinking along these lines? I'm thinking perhaps, Ed, you might have a business which at some stage might look to sell out or sell on.
You know, it's hard to say what I'm going to do in the next few months as businesses open up again. Because I mean, I assume it's going to drop once, more places open up, but I still think there'll be a percentage of people that'll, be cautious about things reopening and still need deliveries. But I mean, even at normal times, we're still up against these giants of the food delivery industry, and we're always, competing with them. So I guess, and also, because I'm a performing artist, one day I would like to get back to that at some point. So perhaps selling on would be a good idea, but it's about finding the right person, because, there are values that I've set up here with Indie Eats that I want to continue. We want to make sure the writers keep getting paid well. We want to make sure that we still contribute to charitable organizations and things like that, and have a real hands-on, quite personal approach to the independent businesses. So yeah, finding that right person who's not just going to buy it over and then turn it into another one of the others, is going to be a challenge, I think.
And Simon, for you, is an exit on the horizon, or is it more a question of taking on a project, building it to scale, and getting value from it in sort of enduringly?
No exit for ourselves. We wanted to see all the businesses grow. We want to be part of it. We want to be part of that journey. We want to be proud of people having an opportunity and a chance to expand and be in a comfortable environment. We want to see where this, over the next sort of 3 to 5 years, where this sort of independent collaborative movement goes. I think it's going to speed up. I think it's going to exponentially move. I don't think it's going to be a sort of 3 to 4% each year. We're going to move in a certain direction. I think it will be done quite quickly. The change in how we sort of live, work, and play. We'd like to see that be part of that movement, and proud to be part of everyone's journey, really.
Great. Talking of journeys, Matt and Rob, is there? I know it's very early stage. I know there's so many variables at the moment, but is exit even sort of dimly on your horizon at some point?
No.
We've talked about where we want to go in the future, and like other things that we want to achieve and do. So one of our premises at the start of when we started our working relationship was that be honest with each other and keep talking with each other about things. And so we know what our dreams are, what our visions are. And at some point that may mean a different avenue of something, but in the sense of exiting Matt Jones Ceramics, no.
It would have been nice asking that.
So I was just going to say, I'm always making pots and making things is my passion. So it's just in me to do that, I think. So.
And that's always going to be there as part of your DNA, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I realise in asking that question of two people, you might get a complete diversion answer. We're not. But fortunately, you're honest with each other, and you're both entirely on message on it. So good luck with that. A slightly more general point about how values are changing, and it's a sort of it's a fairly obvious point in a sense. But do you think people are now more receptive to new ideas? That whilst it may be harder to get the idea off the ground for financial reasons, but the engagement and opportunity is potentially greater as a result of the pandemic. You buy that?
Yeah, engagement. I mean, it just goes back, links back to that personal, the personal touch. I think without that personal touch, people are kind of switching off on that corporate kind of business where there's no face to anything anymore. It has no meaning to their lives because everyone's lives have turned more local. So, and I think that's where businesses like us here as makers here in the Good Sheds and are going to benefit from that.
There's been quite a lot of talk about the sense of purpose of businesses, that it's, of course, how one defines value, whether it's to shareholders, to owners, to staff, to clients, customers, and so on, but that sense of enduring purpose. And just on this, as a sort of a longer term thought, it's quite clear there's been a short term reset, and we're all more thoughtful, more collective in the way we're thinking about people. Do you think that will actually endure? That we won't, we'll just revert to where we were previously when we can, and all that nice stuff goes out the window, and we're back to being visceral people trying to earn our crust?
I was going to say, I think it's changed beforehand. That was already happening.
Yeah, I agree.
It's been accelerated. I mean, we would have never got the good sheds off the ground if that hadn't been happening. It was there. It was there already, and it's just as the people running businesses are that much younger. Simon and I are sort of older end of businesses. I mean, I've got clients who are still running business older than me, but they're almost living in the past and how they think it should happen. But the majority of businesses are starting up are people in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
So I think that's happening, and it's just been accelerated.
Yeah, and that those values will endure, that sense of slightly more collective, collaborative approach. I mean, Simon, I know you firmly believe this as part of your rationale.
I think there'll be a hybrid situation. Donald was right. This started, a few years ago, I think, and it sort of grown quickly during the COVID period. But more of a hybrid situation where we'll cross over back and forth. But I think the move towards more local spend, more local pride in your community and your environment is irreversible. It's sort of going back towards sort of the markets of the early 19th century, late 18th century, where that was the hub of the community. And we're going to have hubs of communities again where people are going to trade off, they're going to live there, they're going to socialize there. And the Good Sheds is just a different type of market, really. Same as where Newport Market's going to go. And they're just different markets for people to drop in and drop out on a daily basis. And it's sort of, I think we've gone back, maybe not a generation, we've gone back sort of 100 years to go forward.
Interesting. Thinking about some of your businesses, looking back, what might you have done differently, knowing what you now know?
Asked Donald to get up early in the morning. Oh God, tons of things we'd have. In terms of planning, we would have planned a lot more of the infrastructure around the projects, access, ingress, egress, the sites, flow of traffic. We would have put the management suites in different places when we now understand how the sites work. And Donald alluded to about three quarters of an hour ago. What we learned at the Good Sheds is unbelievable what we can put into Newport Market and future projects, just in terms of the lease work, in terms of our engagement with clients. It's incredible what we've learned over the last year. And I think COVID has probably positively helped us on everyone's journey quite quickly.
Yeah, I think people are more receptive to change.
Yeah.
They may not necessarily agree with what you want to do, but they're prepared to discuss it. Whereas in the past, you might have just got to know.
Yeah, the same old ways of doing what we've always done are just less of an option, if ever they were.
Right.
Yeah.
How about you for Ed or Matt or Rob? What looking back, what might you have done differently? And if you're completely content with all you've done, that's perfectly fine as well.
I mean, for me, I would definitely have, like Simon was saying, for them, definitely planned a lot better, a lot more earlier on, and worked out, better from what we're doing now. If we could take what we're doing now and put it at the very beginning, that would be wonderful. Pay people like a much more competitive rate from the beginning instead of just relying on goodwill, which of course we didn't know at the time, but that would have been a good start. Customizing, different things like with the platform and the apps, because I mean, you don't know these things until much later, but we could have saved money had we planned just a little bit more. But it's the things we learn as we go along, I guess.
Always be learning, I guess. Also, Matt, Rob.
I'd agree with Ed there that hindsight's a lovely thing, and then like you see, you don't know what you don't know. I don't think there's much on my part that I would change right now. I think in a year's time we'll look back at this, especially through lockdown, and be like, we could have done this, we could have done that. But because it's still because we're quite small, we're still working in it a bit. And I think we're going to have to wait a little bit longer until we see, or when we reflect on this year, what we could have changed and what could we learn from and how we could have grown in different ways.
Couple of last areas for you. Tell me this, how are you viewing this coming year from your business's point of view, but from the wider Cardiff region's point of view as well?
Very excited for us. Barry is a two-season place. You've got the summer tourists, so you've got the summer season, and then we've got Christmas, which is obviously the biggest retail season. So now hopefully we're going to have a nice summer build-up and then a full Christmas build-up, which we didn't have last year. So it's going to be a nice show of what Barry can do, and with less COVID hopefully and less restrictions, it should be a nice growth pattern for us. What we're hoping.
And for our other three panelists, your view both professionally but also for the economy of the wider region.
Well, my perception actually over the last year has been, from a professional services point of view, most people have been really, really busy. And there hasn't been a slowdown in work. So, I mean, some of it's been as a consequence of COVID, and been a lot, and certainly in the beginning, there was a lot of renegotiation of contracts and changes just to take into account what had happened, you know, building sites closing down or leases being extended or different financial deals. So it's been a strange period, but it does suggest that there's going to be growth going forward and more work to be done. It wasn't like the sort of some recessions in the past when there was a lot of work to be done, but it all felt like emergencies. And for everything, it was just a matter of you were just trying to close things down. Here, we still felt we were continuing to build, and there was the support from the people who traditionally in the past would have pulled the plug. They've tried to work with people. So the next year, I can just see more things happening rather than sort of everybody's thinking, thank God that's over, let's just go to bed for the next year. I think there's a lot to do.
There's two phrases that economists and analysts are using quite a lot at the moment. One is the uncoiled spring. It's just going to go like that, allegedly. And the other is a slightly curious phrase of revenge spending, that we've been so constrained, in one way or another, piled up our capital, or however it's defined, and we're just going to get out there and do stuff. Do either Ed or Simon, do you buy that the broader point about optimism that lurks in both views?
Well, for us, obviously the lockdown was, works well for us because people order in more because they can't go anywhere. So for Indie Eats, in terms of where we go forward, as more places open up, I think it's great. I love the fact that hospitality will be opening up soon, and I wish them all luck. And I think we can try and capitalize on some of that, recruit some more restaurants if we can. At the end of the day, we just want them to survive, and we want them to be, to move on into the future successfully. But in terms of what we do, if they don't need us anymore, my job is complete as far as I'm concerned.
That's very sanguine. Simon, you optimistic about the economic prospects, either for you specifically or for the region more generally?
Well, both. I think that I'm not sure about the cold spring, but I think people are waiting to move, and then we, for us at the Good Sheds, we put out the tables for the next sort of 6 weeks for the restaurant areas, and there's been a great take-up, which is showing good demand, which will obviously bring through the spend to the rest of the site and bring the footfall. So we're really pleased with that. I think the key one for us is, and for all businesses, is we've got to make it an experience. We've got to make it that when people come, that it's more than just shopping. That's not good enough. Whatever happens, we have to take that one, that one word, just I'm going shopping. That's not going to work. So for everything that we do, it has to visually be an experience. What you're given needs to be experienced. I think everybody inside the Good Sheds needs to get on board with that, and we encourage people to make sure that they, even the bags that you send somebody out with that day and they take home with them, that needs to be an experience. The way you wrap it, the way you hand it over, the change you give, maybe your tone with people, everything. We have to up our game. Really have to up our game for that.
We're all going to get more active, I guess. We're going to call this to halt in a couple of seconds. I've got one last area to explore with you, which is about advice. Two-stage. Who has given you smart advice about your business ventures? But also, for those watching this live and particularly watching it on YouTube, what one piece of advice would you give to those considering or in the early stages of starting a new business? Advice. You're an advisor, Donald. Come on.
Well, I was going to say the one piece of advice I would give is allow yourself flexibility. We were talking about sort of exit, but I always think of more about the ability to be able to change. Don't tie yourself down in a way which means you can't change your business if something unforeseen comes up, or you get some opportunity comes up. You really regret it when you can't actually change something because you're so tied in what you've done. So sometimes that's looking at your contract, sometimes looking at your financing, sometimes just looking at your mindset and just thinking, do I need to change what I'm doing?
Yeah, keep flexible, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
How about for you, Simon? Advice you've either been given or you would give to others?
Always see the end. See where you're going there. You've got to see that end. Otherwise, in the middle sort of doldrums of your business or starting it can become overwhelming. You have to see the end. And the other one, it's just hard work's free, isn't it? You don't. No one charges you any more money for getting up 7 in the morning. No one says till 7 at night. And to get a business off the ground, we talked about business plans earlier on. There aren't many entrepreneurs who stick after a week to that business plan. I'd imagine Edmund didn't even have a business plan much. He just knew he had a very good idea. He knew the market was right for it, and with some hard work, he stepped into that place. And I think that's what we should think along those lines, really.
Very good. Either Ed or Matt, either advice you've given or that you'd like to give, or that you've received that's helped you.
I suppose for me, it's don't be afraid to fail, because failing is where we learn. And definitely failed a couple of times here with Indie Eats and rebuilt from that. I mean, we started charging. We had this lofty goal of wanting to charge businesses 6% for commission, and it wasn't until we failed at that that we realized that you just can't run a company at that rate. And so, yeah, don't be afraid to fail. Like, it's just part of it. It's how you get up, and it's very cliche, but it's how you get up and rebuild that really shows.
Yeah, you usually history is told by the winners, and it's the same when it comes to business narratives. You only tend to get the the self story about how something succeeded, and very few people are open enough to talk about potential for failure, as you've referenced there. Matt, a closing thought from you?
Yeah, from my experience with working with Rob, I just say, like, to grow, you have to share, and it's only good things can come from it if you can share in an open way, basically.
Well, in a sort of wholly and deliberately unplanned way, you've sort of coalesced around some key themes there about collaboration, about partnership. The changes there are and the sort of underlying values. Maybe if it's generational, maybe it's been accelerated through the pandemic. But I think there's a lot that's stimulating there, and I thank you, all of you, today for your time and observations. Thank you very much. So in this order, perhaps, so Loftco's Simon Baston on behalf of Good Sheds, with Donald Gray of Darwin Gray, Matt Jones and Rob Davis of Matthew Jones Ceramics, and also Ed Chu of Indie Lights. Sorry, Indie Eats. Terrible. It's it has been sort of heartwarming to hear your stories, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Also, of course, everyone who's supported us with Cardiff Life, we are very grateful for that. Please look out for our next business club in May, and also our special crumbs takeaway, which Ed, I think perhaps it comes into your area of hospitality, and it does with you, Simon, as well. It's very much about how hospitality is reopening up in the coming weeks and months. That's next Monday, 10 o'clock, April 19th. Please also, and this is directly relevant to you each, look out for EntreConf, our major new conference for entrepreneurs on July 1st. The future is unwritten. Good luck to you all in the coming months. This has been a Media Clash production. This has been the latest Cardiff Life Business Club. Cardiff together, always. Cheers.
Thank you, Greg. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, man.
Bye.